Hello, and welcome to Majority Rules. This is Season 1, Episode 17, last of the 2024 episodes. This is a podcast about Mizzou Athletics Majority, which is its Olympic sports athletes. We've got those of us with us that have news to cover for a nice holiday episode. We are recording this on Christmas Eve. And it will be released, I think, sometime later this week, I'm guessing. I am your host, Karen Steger. I am the softball, gymnastics, and sometimes swim beat writer and Olympic sports manager at rockmnation.com. And then we can go through our intros, and if you will say your name, what you cover, your favorite holiday tradition, and something you're looking forward to while you're home at your homes away from Columbia. Let's start with below me, Quentin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Quentin Corpywell. I cover football, men's basketball, and some women's basketball for Rackham Nation. I am not coming to you from right outside of Panera Bread in the rain like I was last time I was on here, I think, which is better. This is way better. I'm here in comfy, cozy Bethesda, Maryland, my hometown. So a lot better, a lot less adverse. Favorite holiday tradition. Hanukkah is 2 days away. Starts right on Christmas Day this year. And so I think we might be bringing a menorah to Nashville for the bowl game, which will be fun. So I would probably say lighting the menorah for every night of Hanukkah. There are 8 of them, so looking forward to the start of it on Wednesday.
Nice. And that is cool that you are going to the bowl game. So we will look forward to seeing your coverage about that. Is this your second bowl game? Did you go last year?
I did not go to the Gasparilla Bowl 2 years ago. I went to the Cotton Bowl last year. So yeah, this would be number 2 for me.
Nice. Let's go to Dylan over there, our hand signer.
Hello, everybody. I am Dylan Hedrick. I am the soccer and women's basketball writer for here at Rackham Nation. I am back home in my hometown of Fort Collins, Colorado, currently sitting in my little dusty basements. My favorite holiday memory is both sets of my grandparents live in town. So on Christmas Eve, I get to go spend it with my mom's folks. And then we turn around on Christmas Day and then go spend it with my dad's folks. So it's a nice little separated Christmas, 2 whole days of fun. The one thing I really enjoy about being back here is it's not all flat in Colorado. I live about 20 minutes away from this beautiful place called Horsetooth Reservoir. You can just go up there. It's got some beautiful hikes, go to the lake. I've already been up there a couple times and looking to hit it a couple more times before I head back to Columbia in the new year. So,
how's the weather there?
It's surprisingly mild, but we are expected to have a white Christmas, which will be fun. So I'm gonna have to put away the short sleeves pretty soon.
What's it like in Maryland, Quentin? I should have asked that.
Pretty cold. I like to compare in terms of Maryland and Missouri weather. Maryland gets 4 seasons in a week. Missouri gets 4 seasons in a day.
Yeah.
So the climate's pretty similar, except that Missouri's more extreme. It was pretty cold today. It was about in the mid 30s. But yeah, at night it gets pretty bitter.
And then Matthew, on to you.
First off, I'd like to, since it's the 23rd, tell everybody happy Festivus.
Oh, yes.
Festivus for the rest of us right here, including my family. And favorite.
Do you have any airing of grievances?
Yeah, a lot of problems with you people. No, not
now you're going to hear about them.
You're going to hear about it, yeah. We do actually have the airing of grievances forms over there on the other table, but didn't have time to fill one out. But anyways, favorite Christmas tradition is probably just basically every year go over to my grandparents for Christmas, and then once we're done there, kind of later in the night on the 24th, come back to the house, and me and my parents and our dog, we get the stuff for our dog. Our dog doesn't go up and get their own stuff. That would be impressive. Anyways, but we get our stockings, the presents in our stockings that we have hung up on the railing. And then the next morning, go back to my grandparents, and we get the stuff from the stockings they have at their house, and then go back to our house for Christmas Day. So we have kind of a nice regiment of, what we do each year. But hey, everybody, I'm Matthew Gustafson, the volleyball and wrestling and sometimes baseball beat writer at Rock M Nation.
And then I will say before we get to talking about the episode, so I am in Florida, in my parents' sports-themed kitchen area. My favorite holiday tradition is kind of hard, I guess, seeing all my family, since I didn't grow up in Florida. Going to my brother's house on Christmas and seeing my niece and nephew is a lovely thing that we do every year now. So that's really awesome. And then looking forward to, while I'm here, I'm only one of 21 years or older in the room, but we do try to frequent a couple of different breweries because St. Pete and Tampa have a good beer scene. So we will go check out various places. There's also some really good museums around here. So I like to get my culture fix in while I'm here in Florida. So moving on to our actual show today. First off, let's talk about the student athlete fall semester GPAs. Holy crap. They are here. They are impressive. Per MUTigers.com, the 3.44 GPA for fall was the highest single semester student athlete GPA in history. I think that beats spring 2023. I think, if I remember correctly, it was like a 3.3 something. So awesome. Putting the student and student athlete here at Mizzou. That's always good to see. The top team GPAs, my mind is blown at the fact that like soccer had a 3.87. Like that is actually insane to me. They had 12 people with a 4.0 and 30 with a 3.5 or higher. So Dylan, you would know this. How many people are actually on the soccer roster?
I think that's the
Like
full
that
roster.
money?
Like, we're either at there or it's the full thing. Like if you've heard me talk about soccer, obviously they've had their problems on the field, but culture wise, like grades wise, they lead in community service. Like you can see the culture that Stephanie Goldon is building there. It's clearly there. I mean, 3.87 for a team GPA is just ridiculous. Talk about a team that is committed to the classroom.
I'm not sure our Rock M GPA is 3.87, guys. I don't know, but
I haven't seen it.
I'm going to guess it's not. Also very close to them was women's swim and dive. Theirs was 3.86. They had 16 athletes with a 4.0 and 31 at 3.5 or better. And then real quick, a bunch of programs had their highest GPA in the last decade. Baseball had a 3.43, men's golf had a 3.78, men's track and field had a 3.49. Wrestling, who I remember last spring had below a 3.0, had a 3.48. So good job, Tiger Style. Women's golf had a 3.75, softball had a 3.66. And then we already talked about soccer and women's swim and dive. So keep it up. Boys and girls, great job in the classroom and on the field or wherever it is that you play your sports. So now let's go to in-season sports updates, which basically this is like we're all in all the sports we're talking about are in season now because so we'll just keep the in-season sports updates going. Matthew made a trip to Pittsburgh to watch our Tigers in the Sweet 16. Tell us, how was the experience overall, and how was the Tiger crowd?
So, first off, how was the Tiger crowd? I mean, traveled fairly well. Not as many fans as Kentucky, but that is obviously to be expected. A lot easier to get to Pittsburgh from Lexington than Columbia, right? But I think my favorite anecdote was before the Kentucky match. there was somebody there who had a Colin Irons fathead, and that's Colin Irons, the assistant coach, for those who don't know, was holding it up, and Irons saw it and started like raising the roof when he saw it. It was a lot of fun.
I love that.
But no, great trip to Pittsburgh. I said it is one of my favorite towns in the world, in the U.S. Like maybe legitimately my second favorite town in the United States outside of Chicago. I think there are a lot of similarities culturally between Chicago and Pittsburgh, which is part of why I like it so much. And I picked up a really fun book. I don't have it with me, but it was a Pittsburghese translator. So it had like definitions of all their different words. And
Nice.
I can definitely see a couple of uncles of mine who have more of that Chicago accent. Like I can hear them completely speaking Pittsburghese, like very similar accents in terms of how they sound. But anyways, why don't I get to the volleyball part?
I guess.
I guess, Mizzou ends up losing to Kentucky for the 14th straight time. The stretch dating back to 2016 during the Cricklow era. And they end up bowing out of the NCAA tournament after their Cinderella run in the Sweet 16. Kentucky goes on. They end up losing to Pitt in the Elite Eight.
As many teams do.
Well, yeah. End up losing in 4 sets to Kentucky, 20-25, 20-25, 25-16, and Kentucky really hammered it in the 4th set, 13-25. Mizzou hitting 241. They really were not able to stop that Kentucky offense, and Brooklyn DeLay, who was a finalist for National Player of the Year this season. Kentucky hitting 347 in the match. Why don't we talk briefly about that 3rd set, that 25-16 run? One of the craziest serving runs I have ever seen. Chiarlis Prescatala, easily her best serves of the season. They won a 10-0 run. She gets 3 aces during this run. I think Michael Vernon had 2 or 3 kills in a block during that run as well. Really impressive stuff. But other than that, Kentucky gone on a couple of late runs to close it out in the first 2 sets. And then, like I said, they just really hammered them in that 4th set. But Mizzou, the only 7 seed this year to take down a 2 seed, right? They make it to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2017. And Dawn Sullivan has done in 2 seasons what I think people thought would take a long time to happen. I mean, it was the dark ages of Mizzou volleyball in the final 2 years of the Josh Taylor era. They won a combined 4 and 32 in SEC play between 2021 and 2022. Second year at Mizzou, Dawn Sullivan has them at 11-5, and I believe tied for 3rd in the conference. Looking at what they're losing, what they're gaining this offseason, 7 players who are departing via graduation. One of those, Sarah White, a backup setter, ends up taking her grad year and transferring to USF. But a lot of really key players that they are losing. Jordan Iliff, obviously a mainstay of the program, all 4 years at Mizzou. And then you also have Colleen Finney ends up leaving. Really fantastic middle blocker. You have Michael Vernon, who ends up leaving after a fantastic grad year with Mizzou. And then you also have some key depth players like the aforementioned Chiarlis Prescatala. You have Naomi Franco as well. So a lot of people who end up departing from the team, as well as some transfers out. In addition to that, you have Aspen Maxwell, the freshman. She committed to Mizzou under the Taylor era, ends up going somewhere else. You have a couple of other people as well who've departed. Morgan Eisenberg as well, graduating. My apologies. You have Tatum Longnecker, limited action in her 2 years as a Tiger. And then you also have Elena Pearson, who transferred in this year, didn't get the playing time she was hoping for, ends up transferring for the second time in 2 years. I think I may be missing one person to transfer out. I think there have been 4 transfers. I'll check that. But some transfers in for the Tigers already. They got a big one. The first pickup of the offseason was a really big one.
Yeah.
The Big West Player of the Year in Caitlin Alexander. She was 5th in the nation in kills per set last year at Hawaii. Really, really big pickup for this team. She had 611 kills this year. 611 is absolutely insane on a 259 hitting percentage.
It's a lot.
But she's also a rotation player. 292 digs, 57 total blocks, 30 aces from the service line. This is a player who will play 6 rotations, who will give you quality defense, who can hold up in serve receive, and is going to be, I think, their starter at right side hitter, replacing Jordan Iliff. I watched a little bit of her play at Hawaii, and it looked like they mainly had her lined up as that right side hitter. That would be my expectation. You have another right side hitter, more of a homecoming in Grace O'Reilly, who was at Long Beach State. She will have, I believe, 3 years of eligibility left and really didn't see the floor that much at Long Beach. But she started to get into games later on in the year, ended up making a start for the team. And then, so she is 6'1", Springfield, Missouri native. And then you had on Sunday the addition of a middle blocker, which was really, really big for them.
And you had on your list.
I did, yes. That was really good timing that I was able to get that article out. One day before Trinity Luckett ended up announcing her transfer to Mizzou. So SLU transfer, who was all A10 this year, 2nd in the conference in blocks per set with 1.16. She had 239 kills on a 303 hitting percentage, 138 total blocks, 9th in the A10 in hitting percentage. She started her freshman and sophomore years at SLU with the Billikens. She was an all A10 rookie team member last season, and 6'2". You add some more height at middle blocking, right? Somebody who has that starting experience, but is also still young and can continue to develop with the Tigers. I think the defense is really going to be key. 138 total blocks. No member of the Tigers, I believe, had over 100 blocks this season, had triple digits this season. Mizzou last in the SEC in blocks this year. That's going to be really key. But also, the offense she brings is really going to be important as well, because like I said, one of the best players in the A10 in terms of hitting efficiency. You really need your middle blockers to hit above 300, right? And the offensive efficiency from Mizzou's middle blockers this year was a big part of why they were one of the best offenses in the country. So having somebody to come in who can do that again is absolutely essential, and that is what they got. One of the best middle blockers out there in the portal, maybe the best mid-major middle blocker that was available. And this is a really good class in the transfer portal and middle blockers as well. So that's pretty high praise. And you look at it, the team's lineup is pretty much already set, in my view, for next year.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Round
if
over,
there was anything else
returning at center, you have, the 2-time reigning SEC Libero of the Year in Maya Sands. You have Haith coming back at middle blocker. Now you have Luckett as well. You have, like I said, I think that Caitlin Alexander is going to be on that right side. You have Janet Demaray returning at outside hitter. And then Claire Morrissey is the clear favorite, right, for that final role at outside hitter. 3rd overall recruit in the nation last year. She started to get more playing time as the year went on as a freshman, looked really promising in the front row. Maybe some questions about defense. Don't really know if she's quite ready to be a 6th rotation player yet, and that will be a concern. She's Janet Demaray, was often subbed out for Kiarlis Prescatala, and looks like they're only going to have 3 liberos on the roster next year. Zoe Matias, a freshman, as well. But I would expect Demaray will probably be a 6th rotation player next year. And my best guess would be that they have Morrissey, who plays in the front row, and then a DS probably comes in for her in the back row, which would most likely be Kaylin Rush, which I think she's going to be the DS to take over for Escatala, because you saw Pearson transfer out, right? And that was going to be the battle. So my expectation would be that Pearson either kind of figured out or is maybe told by the coaching staff, hey, Kaylin is going to be the DS next year, and maybe that's kind of been the
Well,
expectation.
they had to trim the roster too, don't
And
they? With
they will have to continue to do so. They're currently at 20 players. They need to trim the roster to 18. So you will see at least 2 players who exit in the transfer portal for Mizzou.
stupid roster limitations. Dumb. It's dumb.
But brief look ahead to next year, they are looking pretty good. Because I am a volleyball sicko, and I have embraced that, I was bored over the first few days of break and took a look at my projections for the starters for every SEC team next year, which, by the way, Vanderbilt having a volleyball team for the first time in a really long time next year, which will be a lot of fun.
Nice.
But
Love to see it.
Mizzou, to me, it looked like they had a top 5 starting line. Kentucky is the clear number 1. I think Texas A&M is probably number 2 right now. They are looking really good. They return almost everybody who was a key member of their lineup. They just added a really good transfer in Kendall Stowers from Baylor. I think they're a dark horse to win the SEC. And outside of that, I think you have Mizzou, probably Florida, because, Florida's there every year, right? Maybe Tennessee, 1 or 2 others. But I think Mizzou, right now, you look at it, I think they're a top 5 SEC team. And I think they have a realistic shot of being in the top 3 again.
I'd love to see it. That would be amazing. So, do you think they're done in the portal now? Especially because some more people would have to leave.
Looking at it, you're set, no pun intended, at setter. You have your 3 defensive specialists. Middle blocking, they have 4 players now, 2 clear starters, a sophomore, a freshman. You have plenty of outside hitters. You have 2 dedicated right side hitters now. I don't really see an area of this team where they would be able to make a huge addition. If one of the best players in the portal says, hey, I want to go to Mizzou, right? You'll find a way to make it happen. But I really think that they're probably done with their additions. Now it's just a matter of who will end up leaving the Tigers. Because like I said, they need to have there are 2 players who are going to enter the portal as a result of those roster limitations. So it's just a matter of who do you lose, right? Is it at a position where you cannot afford to lose a player? What are the, issues that come with that? Yeah. So that's going to be something to really keep an eye on over the next week or 2.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew. And we will hear from you again in a little bit about wrestling. Let's
that
move
one
on.
Will not take as long.
Or as pleasant. except for Keegan O'Toole. So moving on to women's basketball. Since we last recorded, Mizzou has gone 1-1 with a win over Lipscomb and a loss to Oral Roberts. Yikes. How about some takeaways from my favorite women's basketball duo?
Yeah, I'll start because I was at the game. Final score, they end up losing by, I believe it was 13, 76, 63. Felt a lot closer than that all game. They really didn't have a double-digit lead until those final moments. It was really back and forth. Oral Roberts just got off to a really hot start. Mizzou kept chipping away, but every time they got close, Oral Roberts would hit a big shot and return, so they just could not break that tie. They never led in this game, so eventually they found a way to tie it late in that third quarter, but Oral Roberts comes back the other way, big 3 and 1 to end the quarter with a 4-point lead, and then in the fourth quarter, just more of that keep away action, and eventually Mizzou just gets frustrated, can't pull the trigger, and falls just short. So, yeah, it was a disappointing loss for sure. This is another one of those games that Oral Roberts, very talented mid-major team, currently ranked top 20 in the RPI, beat up on an Arkansas team, which admittedly has not been very good. But again, it's a home game. It's a gimme. It's one that you feel you have to have. There were just a lot of 3-point swings that were going the way of Oral Roberts, that were going the way of Missouri. Tough game for Grace Slaughter where she puts up 4 points and you kind of remember, oh, she's still only a sophomore. So it's a disappointing result, to be sure, and kind of a gut check to remember this team is still young, they're still new, and the SEC is not an easy conference for sure.
Yeah, I'll add my few cents. I'm not going to say two because I have more than that. Look, I appreciate Mizzou's fight back. There is a good amount of resilience in this team. And yes, Oral Roberts did beat another SEC team in Arkansas, but Arkansas is not very good. They are 6-8.
Mizzou's supposed to be better than Arkansas.
An SEC team should probably not be 6-8 at this point in the season.
Right.
Conference play hasn't even started. And an actually good SEC team, Oklahoma, beat Oral Roberts by 40.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is a team that
Yikes.
your average SEC team should beat, especially on its home floor, and it didn't happen. I do want to talk about being able to make up for a lack of three-point makes. Mizzou struggled against Oral Roberts in three-point shooting, although they are extremely efficient, one of the most efficient teams, not just in the SEC, but in the entire country. They don't shoot a lot of three-pointers, period. And when they don't go in, they have run into a lot of trouble. They went 3 of 16 against Oral Roberts. Admittedly not good, but you can make up for that by making a lot of two-pointers and or getting to the free throw line and then making a lot of free throws. Now, this is where I will involve the men's team only because it proves a point that I believe is relevant to this topic of conversation.
I'll allow it.
Mizzou men's basketball has done an exceptional job of being able to make up for a lack of three-point makes with a lot of two-point makes and with an insanely high free throw rate, like a top 3 number in the entire country. You saw it last game. Bragging rights, Mizzou shoots 3 of 13 from three-point range, but they hit 22 pointers and get to the free throw line 37 times. Now, did their 9 misses end up costing them, including 6 from Mark Mitchell? Yes. But a big part of the team's ability to stay in that game was getting to the free throw line a lot and being able to hit from inside the arc. This is exactly what happened in the California game. Mizzou only attempts 3 3-pointers in the second half, but they lit the Golden Bears up from inside the arc, and they got to the free throw line 38 times in that game. Now, did their 13 misses almost cost them? Yes, but they kept giving themselves opportunities to make up for their lack of three-point shooting. It's also happened in several other games. Howard, they went 3 of 22 from 3. KU, they made 4 3-pointers all game. But guess what? The Jayhawks got killed on the interior. And that's what allowed Mizzou to not just keep up, but win and have thousands of people pour onto the court, which was super awesome. I still think about that a lot. That was great. Mizzou women's basketball, on the other hand, remember when they attempted 5 3-pointers against Vermont?
Yes.
Which I still don't know how that's possible in the year 2024. But anyway, they shoot
Still
2
a
of
head
5 from 3.
scratcher.
They shoot 2 of 5 from 3. Okay. Did they get to the free throw line a lot? Yes, they actually shot 20 of 25 from the free throw line. Good. They shot 10 of 25 on 2-pointers. Bad. Really bad. You look at last game against Oral Roberts, 3 of 16 from 3. They make 24 2-pointers. Good. They only get to the line 8 times. Not as good.
Good.
Not in the fourth quarter as well. So,
yeah. By the way, Vermont now 5-9, I believe, including a loss to Alaska Anchorage.
Oh God.
I did my favorite set was the one that I think it was Dylan found that was their lowest scoring opening game in program history.
yep. That Vermont game, like, Coach P will still talk about it as a head scratcher. That was one of the most baffling games of basketball.
She was like, "Who did I watch?"
Any level.
Oh,
I mean,
I think I had said on whatever the last episode was, she talked about it like she killed somebody in Vermont.
1,000-yard stare. 100%.
Don't even ask me about what happened in Vermont.
What happens in Burlington stays in Burlington.
Oh man, but no, to bring seriousness back into the picture, Mizzou has not been able to overcome 3-point struggles when it has hit them. Abby Schreck, 0 of 5 against Oral Roberts. I had asked Coach P, can't remember what game it was. It might have been after the Jacksonville State. What it would take for Abby to become a more consistent 3-point option, because she's obviously got superstar potential from 3-point range. She is one of the better 3-point shooters, not just in the SEC, but in the entire country. She had been coming off a stretch where she had shot 1 of 15. And Coach P goes, "Oh, she is a consistent option." Not quite. Almost, but not quite. And last game against Oral Roberts was an example of it. This is a super niche reference, and I'm banking on one of Matthew or Dylan to get this, because I think this is more of an us generation thing. There is a gentleman.
What are you trying to say? I'm old?
No. Hold on. I'm getting
That's
there.
really rude.
Let's try this again, Quentin. Let's try this again.
This happened at the Cotton Bowl when our good friend and Rock M colleague Nate Edwards and I got
Who
there.
is of my generation.
And our other good friend Dan Keegan.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
there was a maddening generational gap that I accidentally mentioned one too many times when we were there. But anyway, there was a gentleman on YouTube named Poofa Shore. 0 for 2? Dang
Lost.
That's brutal.
Good try.
Well, he has, oh my goodness, how many subscribers does he have? Trust me, he's popular.
I feel like I should know, like, I teach a social media class. None of my students have written about this particular.
Quentin, don't feel bad. I did not know who the Rizzler was until I got to campus.
Well, wait, that's really funny. This gentleman, Poofa Sure, has 2.56 million subscribers on YouTube. So
he's known.
Yeah, he's known. And he mostly plays Wii games and is mic'd up during them. And he's known for he's basically the Dan Hurley of playing Wii games. Just gets super distraught, but it's really funny.
I'm familiar. I know. And now I understand.
There's one me on the Wii named Abby that he has this running beef with. And I just looked up before this episode, somebody made a 28-minute video on his entire beef history with this meat character named Abby. And most of the time he just screams, "Abby!" And when Abby Schreck goes 0 of 5 from 3, her shot selection's good. They're just not going in. I'm just thinking to myself, Abby! She's right there. And she's shown she can be a superstar from long range. I just think it would be to her benefit and Mizzou's benefit if she was efficient all the time instead of most of the time. That's a very tall order, but I wouldn't say that if I didn't think she could get there.
I think it's something to watch. Sorry, I got one more thing on Abby, is because I don't know if you remember, Quentin, but she started off really hot to start the year last year in non-con, and then almost all of it kind of dissipated during conference play, whether it was just attempts or whether it was makes. Her percentage dropped from a ridiculous 45% down to the mid or high 30s. So she was still shooting well for the season, but her conference play didn't really reflect the non-con that she had. So a game like Oral Roberts gives me a little bit of worry as we head towards some of these tougher competition.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's some of that sophomore experience that you can kind of shake that. But just looking back to last year, this is something that's happened with Abby.
Now, Quentin, the name that pops into my head is not Abby, but Lucy. Specifically, the classic from Charlie Brown, right? Where, okay, early on in the season, you have the two awful losses, Vermont, Norfolk State. But then they start to bounce back. I mean, they destroy St. Louis, a team they lost to last year.
Yeah.
They beat Wichita State. They have a solid win over SMU, and they start to kind of beat up some of this lower level competition. And then Robin finished in Mizzou women's basketball, playing the role of Lucy to my Charlie Brown. Pick up the football right out from under me. 76-63 loss to Oral Roberts. And you started to think, I still didn't think that this would be like a really good SEC team, right? But maybe they can hang around, maybe just grab a WNIT bid, just not have a terrible season, right? And all that confidence goes down the drain in one loss. Because if you lose 3 bye games like that in non-con, and now you're going to start play in the best women's basketball conference in the country, how do you expect to survive that? I said I could see them going 0-18. I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm saying I think that Mizzou women's basketball going 0-18 is likelier than it was for Mizzou men's basketball to go 0-18 right last year. A lot of stuff has to happen, but I think that the disparity in talent between and coaching, I think, is especially important part of this conversation between Mizzou and the average SEC team is bigger than it was for men's basketball last year. And, I mean, they probably pick up, I don't know, maybe a win at Arkansas, right? I think they pick a win somewhere. But it just seems like this is not going to get better, and this is going to be a really ugly conference slate where there are going to be some really, really bad results against top teams.
Yeah, Matthew, I definitely agree with you. One of the few things that gives me a sliver of hope heading into conference play is that Mizzou is not the only team that has suffered multiple, at least on the surface, dumbfounding losses to mid-majors that an average SEC team should beat. I think about Texas A&M, for example. Their first game of the season, they lose by 6 to Texas A&M Corpus Christi, which is the women's version of Mizzou losing to formerly UMKC, now Kansas City, a few years ago. They also lost to, I believe, Ball State. Yep, they lost to Ball State. So, and then Arkansas, I have kind of lost count of how many silly losses they've endured already. They opened the season with a loss to Fairfield, get dominated by Oral Roberts. They lost to Bowling Green, and their last 2 games they've lost to Liberty and Troy. And so Mizzou is not alone in losing these types of games, but I think about January 3rd when South Carolina comes to town. I have a very, very hard time believing that any of the magic from, 3 years ago now?
2019?
Oh,
that
feels like 30.
Wait,
I think it was 2020 because it was during COVID.
Feels like 30 years
I was
ago.
there.
Am I misremembering, or did Avery Crockett make the winning layup?
No.
I think you're
It
totally
was Lauren
misremembering.
Hansen.
Lauren
In
Hansen made the
overtime.
winning layup.
I think it was December
It might
31st,
have been
2020.
2020.
You'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So I think we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary.
Oh, yeah.
But-
So I'm not sure any of the magic from almost a full Olympic / FIFA World Cup cycle ago are coming back. Like, I'm watching South Carolina. I'm watching Tennessee, who I know that game the other day. Who in the world did they beat by? What was it, 80? After they hit 33 pointers.
Tiny little school.
Absolutely insane. I don't remember who they played, but it was, yeah.
But I watch
What on
these.
earth?
I watch these teams, and I really don't think that Mizzou is in the same stratosphere as them.
Yeah, if you check on Warren Nolan, they've come out with their predictive results based on any Nets RPI rankings. So Missouri is currently projected to finish 13th out of the 16 SEC teams, 3-13 in conference record. They project 5 teams to finish with double-digit losses. So that would be Mizzou, Texas A&M, Florida, Georgia, Arkansas. So there's a clear bottom 5. The Mizzou will get at least one crack at all of those teams by just checking out the schedule. You play some of those teams at home, you play some of them away. You get a couple of those mid-level teams like your Auburns, your Vanderbilts that could be tournament teams, but have also had some silly losses that you could beat. So looking at the schedule, if everything goes right for Mizzou, I see 10 wins. But if you're looking based on games they purely could win, looking in actuality, I think you're more around that 4 or 5 mark. So I don't think it'll be a disaster conference year by any means. I think this team just has to do their job because, again, they've struggled. But let's not forget this team didn't really just stumble into 10 wins accidentally. They've got some definite lows, but there are some highs there. Ashton Judd looks really good when she's on. Lanaya Randall has been amazing when she has. Angie Gala-Kalundi has some pretty good games. Grace Slaughter hopefully can look like that number 1, number 2 option in conference play. So there's a lot of talents on this team, but I don't think a tournament seems likely. Maybe a WNIT, WBIT bid, but for now, I think just continuous improvement, try and pull off an upset here and there, but just never get discouraged because what happened last year, they lost a lot of games in a row, and it just kind of spiraled with injuries last year. And finished 2-14. That's the last thing you want this time around. Just try and hang your head up high and fight till the end. I think that is your goal for Mizzou women's basketball.
And I mean, do I think that they go winless? No, but there's more of a path there than you would have expected, right? And to me, this team lacks 3 things: SEC height, SEC depth, SEC coaching. And when those are exposed in non-con, it's not going to get better, right? Those flaws, those issues are only going to get worse and worse when you start to go up against actual SEC level
schedule's so hard too,
right? So I think that those flaws are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and become more of a problem as the year goes on. And I really do not have any faith, to be honest with you, in how this conference schedule is going to go.
Yeah, I think there's good and bad parts to this women's basketball team. And again, I think just that South Carolina game will be telling because, again, that will be that first SEC opponent.
Yeah.
A win is not likely. A win barely seems possible. But I think last year they kept themselves in that game till basically the end of the third quarter. You'd hope for a similar result, or at least hanging around till the very end.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see. Meanwhile, Kelly Harper hasn't gotten hired by anybody that I've seen. So
I think she's been doing some broadcasting.
Let's make that call, Laird. All right. Thanks, guys.
It's a good thing we've got some gymnastic stuff to talk about before wrestling. So we have some positive news before we get kind of down in the dumps again.
Well, and we will put Rory's swim and dive, diving update in here. She has some information about their performance at Winter Nationals in Bloomington.
Hey everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Back with you in a different type of setting this week. We're at home in Chicago for the holidays. Always great to be back here, but just because we're on break doesn't mean we stop talking about Mizzou swim and dive, your favorite Olympic sport. So to start things off on good terms, so happy to tell you guys about the record-setting student athletes the University of Missouri has. Not only is this team setting personal bests in the pool week after week, they're setting personal records on the books. They're hitting the books. The women's team finished with a 3.86 grade point average in the which is the program's highest over the last decade. It's their 22nd consecutive GPA above 3.0, which is just insane to have that streak going for 10 years now for each semester. So huge props to them. They had individually 16 student athletes post that exact 4.0 GPA, which was the most among any team at Mizzou. So give them a hand. You want to be study buddies with somebody? Pick someone on the women's swim team. Seriously. But maybe not just the women's swim team, because Mizzou men's swim and dive also showed out on those transcripts. They had a GPA of 3.31, which was their third highest over the last decade. And with them, similarly, that's their 20th consecutive GPA above that 3.0 mark. And they had 3 athletes post a perfect 4.0 GPA, which is just huge to them. I feel like, when you see student athletes, not all the time do they get recognized for the school aspect of everything. And these swimmers are not only just having a phenomenal year in the pool, but also outside of that. So just major props for them. That's not something that should go unnoticed. Just shows how hardworking, how dedicated, how determined these athletes are. And I know last time we chatted, I kind of had a mini update for you with nationals about the swim side of things, but not really about dive. We didn't know how that was going to go, what it was going to look like, what the vibes were. But I do have some really fun results to announce with you guys. We had a couple placements, again, kind of hit or miss whether or not we would see results where that would be posted. Collier Dyer, 4th place in the men's 3-meter diving with the score of 730.55. 5th place in the men's platform diving with a total score of 747.45. He was not the only one to get into those placements in men's platform diving with the score of 623.90. In 10th place was Derek Colbert. So huge props to both of them for showing out at nationals. Again, kind of weird figuring things out, but just a thing that I've noticed with this dive team is they're kind of hidden in the shadows, because most of the time you hear swim and dive, you focus more on the swim aspect of things. It's what you're more familiar with. It's what, the big total of the score comes from. But you can't forget about those divers. And Collier Dyer, for example, has been a consistent bright spot for this Mizzou men's team. He's constantly in the points, constantly bettering himself each week. So huge props for him for this finish at nationals. It's something the team should be proud of, and he individually should really be proud of himself for. And I can't wait to see, the rest of the season, what he's able to accomplish and how he's able to further his skill. And that goes for the team as well. Now from me, upcoming, the swim and dive team will be having a meet against Louisville on January 3rd. So I should have kind of a looking forward update for you guys that should be getting to you soon. And then I just hope to see you guys on the podcast. But glad I could be in here, even coming from Chicago, coming from cold weather. But as always, I love Majority Rules, and it's the best podcast to find your Olympic sport. So I will see you guys later. But again, happy holidays. And thanks for listening to everything I have to say about swim and dive.
Updates for gymnastics. I've been talking about this damn black and gold meet for so long. It's kind of crazy. It just happened. And it did not disappoint. I was told it was a rookie mistake for Ryan, the SID, to put out the scores without videos to accompany them, because some of the scores were on the lower side, and I think that it collectively freaked out the gymternet a little bit with some of the scores that were released. But also, after sending videos to my colleague Claire at College Gymnastics News, she said that it looked like they used level 10 elite judges, in which case they score them. The scores sounded very much like level 10 elite judges. They were not getting Homerism scores by any stretch of the imagination, and things that they were likely getting deducted on. She said that NCAA does not typically deduct on. But anyway, the good news about it, I don't know how they're going to figure out these lineups, you guys. I don't know how I'm going to figure them out. I don't know how they're going to figure them out, because as we know, only 6 technically make the lineup, and then the top five scores count. The depth on this team just is unmatched. 50 routines were competed at this meet. My phone battery proves it. 27 of them scored 9.8 or higher. So that was really awesome. I took video because Nate Salzman wasn't there. I told him I would keep him updated of what was happening. So I took video of every beam and every floor routine. just like my whole phone is just gymnastic video after gymnastics video. But he was like, he's like, I need you to send this to me. And I'm like, all of them? Yeah, all of them. Oh God. Okay. It's going to take a while. So I guess technically Natalie Jones from ABC 17 was there, but I didn't see her. So it was just me and Natalie were the only media people there. We didn't have a chance to talk with Shannon after the meet, but I did send him an email, and he said he was pleased with their performance, the progress, and the display of depth today. Like I said, they completed 50 routines, and I think they hit on all but 2 of them. So a hit would basically means like not a fall. There were 2 falls on vault. But overall, it's early. It's late December, mid-December. I don't know what time it is. It's mid-December. They're doing well. And we should be extremely excited about the progress of the team. So they showed 6 10.0 start value vaults, which means that they've added another one since the last inter-squad meet. Freshman Rayleigh Jackson. She was one of the ones that fell on her dismount. But she did showcase a 10.0 start value vault. So that basically what that means is that if you do the vault perfectly, you actually can score a 10.0, whereas someone who does an easier vault, they can only score like a 995 is their highest. And that's what most of the people last year, half the lineup last year did your Trinko full vaults, which is only a 995 start value. So they're working up to having a bunch of people that now they have a whole vault lineup of people that can possibly score a 10.0. So that was pretty awesome. The highest scores were Kira Burns. She got a 9.9, which ties her highest score ever on vault. And then there were 9.85s from Lauren McPherson, who is a transfer from San Jose State, Abby Miller, who's from Illinois, sophomore Jessa Conadera, who was on the team last year, but we never saw her. She was like the star of the meet. I'll get to her more later. Hannah Horton and Jocelyn Moore. Bars has some kinks to work out based on the scoring, but that was where it seemed like it came into play that some of the things that they were taking off on are things that will not be necessarily deducted for when they actually start competing. Associate head coach Whitney Snowden said she was happy with the Tigers' performance and said they will continue to work on tightening up their body positions on handstands and their foot form. So making sure when they're swinging around the bars that their toes are pointed. Because they do get points deducted from that. The highest scores from that were Amari, who had a 9.9, and then 9.85s from Addie Lawrence, Hannah Horton, and Lauren McPherson again. Beam, you guys, Beam, which was a nightmare last year, was a dream on Wednesday. I was so impressed. They had 4 people get 9.9s. 4, including Helen, who, of course, beautiful as always. Jessa, again, Lauren McPherson, and Kenny Griffin, who got her highest beam score ever. And she only started competing in beam about halfway through last season. So lots of awesomeness on beam. I did not hear back from Lacey Rubin yet, the beam coach, so I don't have anything additional to report on her. Floor was awesome as always. Jackie Turpek's choreo is coming together nicely. She said that in the fall, she choreographed 14 routines. 14. And that they're constantly making tweaks and changes to the routines. She was even making some like going into that meet, like the day of. So it just, the floor continues to astound me. The music, the choreo, acrobatics is just incredible. Amari had the high score in that one. She had a 995, which ties her best score from last year. Freshman Rayleigh Jackson had a 99, and then there were 985s from Hannah Horton and Laura McPherson. So you notice I keep saying the same names over and over again. So back to Jessica Nadera, who like legitimately did not get into any lineups last year. They said she worked really hard over the summer, just really got going, and her scores on Wednesday proved it. Like she could possibly find herself in lineups this year after basically being a non-factor in the year before. So that's just another person to possibly pencil in there. Shannon brought up Lauren McPherson's performance. Obviously, I mentioned her in the top scores through everything. Her lowest score was a 985. She was really awesome. He also talked about Hannah Horton's performance. She did a really great job. And then, like, besides Jessa, I thought that Rayleigh Jackson who was not the highest touted freshman of the recruiting class. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I think she was a 5-star, but she was like an underrated 5-star. Like people didn't really talk about her that like the way that they talk about Olivia Kelly or Kaya Tanskanen.
You know that Mizzou's recruiting is good when you go, oh yeah, she's a 5-star, but she was an underrated
5-star.
Multiple 5-stars in the class, just underrated. Like
I know it's really kind of crazy. Like I was
know.
like, oh, she's kind of an under the radar person, but she shouldn't be an under the radar person because she clearly is a very good gymnast. So I don't know how they keep her out of. I know that Shannon said that they will probably try to kind of bring the freshmen in a little bit later and they won't be just thrown into the fire right away because it's hard as a freshman to compete in the SEC like right away and not get, I don't know, rattled easily or anything like that. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes because Rayleigh seems like she's worked her way into some lineups. Like Nate and I were trying to go through what we think it'll be. And like, we've got her penciled in the top 6 and I don't know how you don't put her in there with what she's doing. And especially now with vault, because she has a 10.0 vault. So yeah, first meet, January 3rd, Beauty and the Beast, which will take us to, I talked about the beauty, and now Matthew is going to talk about the beast, which is wrestling.
Yep. And Mizzou wrestling, not that much beast recently, to be honest with you. Let's start off with some retirement news. Noah Certain comes back briefly at the Cougar Clash, but ends up deciding best thing for him long term is going to be if he medically retires from the sport. Now, obviously, wish him all the best, right? He had a fantastic career as a Tiger, and it looks like I think he's in the medical track, so I have no doubt that he's going to have a fantastic career in medicine as well. Where does this leave the Tigers on the mat? Bit of a tough spot, right? Certain was going to be one of their best wrestlers this year, one of the most experienced wrestlers this year. Now they're sticking with Gage Walker, the freshman, who, to be fair, has looked really promising. Like, he looks like a guy who can be very good for a long time. And why don't we get into the collegiate duels, journeyman collegiate duels? They had 3 matches back to back to back in Nashville. First,
on the same day as bragging rights, right?
Yep. They end up losing 2 of them. They lose 24-19 to Little Rock. That was a upset, 20-16. They beat Binghamton 19-15, and they lose to number 1 Penn State, who is looking like one of the best, if not the best, wrestling teams of all time in college, 41-3. Walker, like I said, really, really strong results. 17-2 Tech fall in the Little Rock match. 8-2 decision over number 33 Carson Wagner of Binghamton. And then again, the top guys that he goes up against, he usually loses, but it's really close. 5-4 decision, he drops to number 12, Luke Lealdahl. 133, Cade Moore just continues to really struggle. Loses 11-2 to Nasir Bailey, loses 7-4 to Micah Rose, and loses 14-3 to Braden Davis.
Ooh.
Josh Edmond, Colton Hawks, both looking pretty solid. Edmond, Hawks both win in their first 2 matches, including a ranked win for Hawks against Binghamton. Number 23, Will Ebert, he wins 3-1 decision. Edmond drops a 4-1 decision in overtime to number 3, Bo Bartlett against Penn State. And Hawks drops a major decision to 4-time national champion Carter Starachi at 184. Other guys, Zeke Seltzer in the lineup loses all 3 matches. He's taking over for Logan Joffrey. They're not sure really if that's injury or if that is something that they're looking at making the lineup switch. Jay Conway ends up losing in the first match, a ranked matchup. Solid second match, tech fall over Jordan Brown, and then loses an 11-3 major decision to 4th-ranked Tyler Kasak against Penn State. And this is the one that really hurts. 165 Cam Steed. He's looked so promising this year, right? First year in a lineup, looking like a guy who can be an All-American in his career, but he just keeps getting injured, and it's really been the story of his career at Mizzou. He finally gets back. He was injured early in the year. Finally gets back, right, for these collegiate duels. Minute and a half into his first match of the day, can't continue. He's injured or loses by injury default.
Oh, my gosh.
The hits keep coming for the Tigers, right? And then you have Joel Milan filling in for the Binghamton match. He ends up dropping an 8-2 decision, and they end up forfeiting at 165 in the Penn State match. 197, this is an interesting scenario. Aiden Sinclair has looked promising as a freshman, right? Top recruit, but he's getting really close to losing his red shirt, and you don't want to do that, right? Because they can use all 4 years of him, and he is going to be really good for the next 4 years. So they end up putting Jesse Casada out there. He ends up losing first match, number 5, Stephen Little. He gets pinned in the first minute and a half. 4-1 decision to Caden Bevis of Binghamton, and then he loses a tech fall to another national champion from Penn State. Or pardon me, no. He loses by fall in a minute 45 to Josh Barr, who's ranked 7th. 285, Jarrett Stoner was in there for each of those matches. Again, not sure Nissel is at an injury. Are they just trying to rest up some of these guys? But Stoner takes the first match and then ends up losing.
That was his first career dual victory I saw online.
I think it was, yeah. So some good things there. And then obviously the guy I have left, I get to talk about is Keegan, because again, that's possible, right? Keegan O'Toole easily has the best day of any Tigers wrestler. 19-3 tech fall over number 33 Tyler Brennan. 21-8 major decision over number 12 Brevin Casella. And then the match of the year, the highly anticipated number 1, number 2 potential rematch in the national championship, Keegan O'Toole, Levi Haynes, and it did not disappoint. This one was controversial. He ends up with a 4-1 decision in overtime. The takedown call has been disputed by some. Christian Piles, who is the leader at Flow Wrestling, pretty big name in media for collegiate wrestling, right? Put out something like a 7-minute video analyzing this takedown call. Like, this thing has the social media college wrestling community up in arms, right? It is a big thing. It is going to be talked about if they rematch at the national title, which very much looks possible. But number 1, number 2, Keegan O'Toole comes out on top, retains his status as the guy to beat at 174. But the question
thing that I think is really interesting about the two of them that I saw was that, like Keegan has twice won a national title at 165, different weight class than what he's competing. And then Haynes won at 157, last year, also a different weight class, and then they just
Yep.
move up, and then they're just like, yeah, I'm still amazing.
And by the way, the fact that Haynes moved up 2 weight classes from
Yeah.
157 to 174 in an off season is unbelievable. Like, that is insane. To put that amount of muscle on, that amount of weight on, as a wrestler, really hard to do.
Yeah.
But the question is, Keegan, right? You have him. If Rock Elam eventually gets healthy, because we still haven't seen him this year, but you have to imagine it seems like he's got to be getting pretty close to returning at this point, because if they were not going to have him for the rest of the year, then my guess would be that they would use the red shirt, right? They would just ignore the red shirt for Sinclair. But the fact that they're trying to avoid having to waste that red shirt makes me think that Elam's return is pretty close. So you have, if he's back wrestling like he can, those are 2 national title contenders. Josh Edmond, Colton Hawks seem like locks to make the NCAA championships, guys who can compete for an All-American position, right? But outside of that, it's some guys who are going to be struggling to get to the championships. You got 33 guys. Right now, Gage Walker, 125. Like I said, he's shown a lot of promise. But will he be able to make it in a really tough Big 12? I don't know if that will happen. 133, Cade Moore has not looked anything like the guy he was before.
He went 0-3, right? Has he won at any matches?
I think he's won in a few of them this year, but it has not been a pretty year for him, right? 149, like I said, Zeke Seltzer in Logan Joffrey has been ranked. If he's healthy, if he's the starter, he probably makes the championships, but he hasn't really had many big wins this year. He was as high as 10th, I think, last year. He hasn't looked anything like that so far this season. 157, Jay Conway is ranked 32nd right now in Intermat. Again, it's going to be really tough for him in that Big 12 to make the championships. Is Cam Steed going to be back? He's been so injury prone. I don't think they have a guy who can make the championships out at that weight class outside of Steed. If he's healthy, he has the talent to make it, but will he be healthy? I don't know. He's had so many injuries this year already. And then 285, Seth Nissel, a guy who will most likely make it in, but how far will he make it, right? So usually you'll see 8, 9, 10 guys from Mizzou. They had all 10 guys last year make the NCAA championships. You may only see 6 or 7, 8 this year, right? It seems like they're going to have a couple of guys who are having really tough paths to make that NCAA championship. And so this has just been a really, really tough year for them in terms of injuries, in terms of guys.
Injury.
Again, yeah. They had brutal injuries last year, and it's been even worse this season. In terms of guys who have not really looked the same since they got injured last year. Guys who you were looking for bounce-back performances from, who really haven't had it. And maybe some guys who you were hoping would take the next step, and they haven't quite done that yet. So a lot of different issues for this team. Offense still a work in progress for some of these guys. It's gotten better from the beginning of the year, but still something to keep an eye on. And I mean, this is just a brutal schedule, right? I mean, you look at it, and I said their home opener is going to be Cornell, who was the national runner-up last year, and they're a top 15 team this season. Now you have a bit of a reprieve. Well, first you have to face number 15, Stanford. Bit of a reprieve. You face Utah Valley. Then you face Arizona State, who's got some All-Americans, former national champion, and Richard Figueroa. And then to close out the regular season, you have in order number 22 West Virginia, number 21 Oklahoma, number 3 Oklahoma State, number 13 Iowa State. Brutal schedule.
Who made that schedule?
This is a very tough Big 12 conference. And because of the way that the NCAA championships are set up, where conferences get a certain number of bids, right? Usually for the Big 12, it's like you get maybe 5 or 6 guys at each weight class, and there's only a couple of at-large spots. If you don't get one of those, top 6 spots in the Big 12, which, like I said, is really tough because of how good the conference is, it's going to be really tough to make the tournament.
Yeah.
So the performance of Big 12 is going to be the deciding factor. I mean, it always is, but especially this year with how good the conference is. And I said it's going to be tough for some of these guys to make the NCAA championships, which honestly is not usually something that you say too often about Mizzou wrestling.
Yeah. Well, we'll just hope that it gets better. Elam comes back soon. Some of these other people get their butts in gear.
Number 1 O'Toole beats number 2 Haynes. O'Toole continuing to look like Keegan, right? Keegan is Keegan, and he always looks like Keegan, right? Incredibly consistent, and he remains the favorite to win the national title at 174.
Love to see it, hear it, whatever.
I guess it depends on what where you're watching or listening.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you, Matthew. Jam-packed with information as always. So one last thing before we get out of here, please head to rockmnation.com. Support the work of all of these people here, as well as the now I'm coughing, and other amazing writers that we have on staff. Still cranking out articles left and right. We got many sports going on at the moment. Well, not technically at the moment, but we'll be back going on shortly. Please join our subscription service, rockm.plus. It is only $5 a month. Please rate our podcast 5 stars. Leave us reviews. We like a comment too. I think we got a comment on the last one from noted Mizzou gymnastics fan Jan Summers, who is the booster club president. So yay, Jan. You can also follow us on the social medias. We're all still using Twitter. I am at Karen Steger. Matthew is at M_Gustafson27. Dylan is at Dylan R. Heinrich. He also uses Blue Sky. I do too, but not very often. And Quentin is at Quentin Corpuo. Oh, and since we piped in Rory's update, she is at Rory Whetstone with an H7. Thank you for joining us, and Happy New Year. And MIZ. Quentin, get this right.
ZOU.
ZOU.
We don't have an awkward pause to end this podcast.
Nope. You live and you learn.
Nailed it.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.